This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Israel discovers a terror tunnel on its southern border and also declares its northern border is non-negotiable. Plus, for the first time in more than a decade, a bus bombing rocks Jerusalem. Some wonder if this is the beginning of more to come. And Israeli doctors travel all the way to Africa to save a child's heart. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell, coming to you this week from about a mile from the Gaza border. From this spot in times past, we've seen missiles fly out of Gaza City into Israel. But there's another danger. Not too far from here, Israel discovered a terror tunnel. It's the first one discovered by Israel since the 2014 summer war with Hamas. It's almost surreal. A beautiful pastoral setting all around. But about 100 feet underground, Hamas planned terror with this tunnel.
When everything is quiet, it's like heaven. It's the most beautiful place in the world. But when it's not, it's terrifying.
About a mile behind me, beyond these orchards, is the border with the Gaza Strip. About 60,000 Israelis live, work, and send their children to school in this area. The terror tunnel was found very close to this spot. Hamas says it wants to use these terror tunnels to infiltrate into Israel, murder Israelis, or kidnap them and take them back into Gaza. Sharon Calderon lives in Kibbutz Sufa, close to where the army discovered the tunnel. For more than 10 years, Hamas launched rockets across the border. Since the development of the Iron Dome anti-rocket system, Hamas terrorists have gone underground.
When you have missiles, most of the time we have alarms, so you have 5 seconds to get ready. It's not a lot, but it's 5 seconds. The terror tunnels, we don't know.
No one knows how many of these tunnels exist, but Israel says it's working to find them.
We exposed a tunnel based on 4 core components: intelligence, technology, boots on the ground, and good engineering capabilities.
IDF spokesman Peter Lerner said the discovery wasn't a big surprise, since Hamas has been boasting about the tunnels for some time. Reserve Colonel Atai Shelach sees the tunnel threat as tactical, not strategic.
They can make some damage over there, but the image of this, it's more important than the damage, and they can succeed in this.
Shelach says terrorist tactics have evolved, from hijacking planes in the 70s to missiles and now tunnels. Israel will find solutions, he said, but it will take time.
It's like a marathon here. It's a long race between the Hamas and the IDF and the State of Israel.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Kibbutz Sufa, on the border with Gaza. You know, when you're down here on the border with Gaza, it's beautiful countryside and often peaceful, but that peace is deceptive. The discovery of the terror tunnel brings back painful memories of that 2014 war with Hamas. Here's a look back at that turbulent time. The IDF released this chilling footage of the Hamas terrorists who infiltrated Israel. Israeli soldiers stopped the infiltration, but it's this kind of Hamas operation that presents a clear and present danger to Israelis along the border with Gaza. The tunnels are designed to infiltrate Israeli communities like this one close to the border. Gaza is just about a mile that direction, and some of these tunnels are more than a mile long, 60 feet deep, with multiple exits. It proves that Hamas has been planning this for a very long time.
And I can't imagine anything more terrifying for the people who live there than the thought that suddenly the earth opens up, almost like a scene out of a grade B zombie movie. And the walking dead come out, except they're not dead, they're not walking, and they're armed with machine guns, anti-tank missiles, grenades, and a few thousand rounds of ammunition. That's why we had to do the ground operation. There was absolutely no choice. What country in the world would allow its people to be under that kind of danger?
The first goal of Israel's ground campaign is to discover and destroy this elaborate maze of tunnels. This is footage of IDF soldiers discovering a tunnel inside a home and destroying the tunnel. Israel sees these tunnels as an enormous threat to its population. One tunnel started from underneath the Wafa hospital in Gaza, and several came from the neighborhood of Sajaiya, the scene of some of the heaviest fighting. In the past 2 weeks, Hamas terrorists made several infiltrations into Israel using these terror tunnels. And Israel announced Hamas prisoners told of a mega terror event planned for the Jewish New Year. About 200 Hamas terrorists plan to kill and kidnap hundreds of Israelis along the Israeli-Gaza border. Besides the threat that Israelis are facing here on the southern border, the people of Jerusalem are wondering if bus bombings may become a new part of the wave of terror they've experienced for months. The recent attack injured more than 20 and destroyed 2 buses. Moments after the explosion, police and emergency medical teams rushed to the scene of the attack. We're about 100 yards or so from the incident that took place, where one Jerusalem bus exploded and set a second bus nearby on fire. It took Jerusalem police time to determine exactly what happened.
The facts are, there was an explosive device that went off inside a bus, and there are wounded people. There are many other subjects we need to investigate. I imagine that within half an hour, maybe more, we'll be able to definitely identify who laid down the device, who's behind it. We're hearing all sorts of claims of responsibility by groups for this incident.
The attack represents the first bus bombing in Jerusalem in more than 10 years. One of the last ones, marked by this memorial, took place here in 2004. At the time, Palestinian terrorists frequently targeted buses, and Israelis hope Monday's attack won't be the beginning of a new wave of terror attacks against those buses. The attack also came as Israelis are preparing for the Feast of Passover. Meanwhile, Palestinians in Gaza passed out candy celebrating the attack. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine called it a positive and important development of the Intifada. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem. Well, up on Israel's northern border, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held a cabinet meeting on the Golan Heights and delivered a strong message to the world.
The Golan Heights will forever remain in Israel's hands. Israel will never come down from the Golan Heights.
It was the first time since Israel gained control of the strategic plateau 49 years ago that the government held an official meeting there. It comes against the backdrop of peace talks in Geneva regarding Syria's civil war that's threatened to overflow into Israel. Syria's foreign minister responded saying that Syria is prepared to use military means to recapture the Golan Heights. Netanyahu said dozens of ancient synagogues on the Golan testify to its historical place in the land of Israel.
During the 19 years that the Golan Heights were under Syrian occupation, when they were a place of bunkers, wire fences, mines and aggression, they were for war. In the 49 years that the Golan Heights have been under Israeli rule, they have been for agriculture, tourism, economic initiatives, and building. They are for peace. In the stormy region around us, Israel's the stabilizing factor. Israel's the solution, not the problem.
Netanyahu said that after nearly 50 years, the international community should recognize that the Golan will permanently remain in Israel's hands. Well, Israel's deputy chief of staff also addressed the foreign media, and here's what he had to say about the threats facing Israel.
We can say that our enemies reach a new level of capabilities, and the meaning of that is that future wars are going to be much harsher comparing to anything we experienced in the last 20 years.
Golan also told reporters even though ISIS gets more attention, Iran and its ambition to dominate the Middle East poses an even greater threat to Israel and the region. Coming up, even though Israel faces threats from all directions, Israeli doctors travel thousands of miles to save a child's heart. Despite the constant threat of war and terrorism, Israel has distinguished itself as a nation that reaches out to others in need. In our next story, CBN News Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl takes us to Tanzania, where an Israeli medical team with Save a Child's Heart is partnering with local medical staff to develop a life-saving heart treatment program.
Dar es Salaam is the largest city in the East African country of Tanzania. This is the Cardiac Institute at the Muhimbili Hospital in Dar es Salaam. Tanzania has 50 million people, yet it's the only place in the entire country that performs heart surgeries. Last year, the Jakaya Kikwete Cardiac Institute saw 25,000 patients and performed 270 surgeries. That's not nearly enough. Help is needed, and the Israeli organization Save a Child's Heart is answering the call by partnering with the Muhimbili Hospital. At the Wolfson Medical Center, doctors give their time to save a child's heart. Over the years, they've saved the lives of more than 4,000 babies and children from Africa, South America, Asia, and the Middle East. And there's more.
For us, just bringing children to Israel, it's nice, it's important, but it's not as good as treating them here at home.
Cardiologist Dr. Sagi Asa is one of 35 doctors and other staff who brought their talent and care to Dar es Salaam for a week-long mission.
For the healing process of a child, it is as important as the surgery itself. To be in your environment, treated by your physicians, speaking your language.
They performed 12 surgeries, 21 other procedures, and screened 125 children for heart issues. That number included 7-month-old Whitney. She needed surgery to separate the blood vessels to her heart. CBN News received a rare opportunity to document the surgery performed by the team of Israeli and Tanzanian doctors.
And if not treated at the first year of life, that might be irreversible. And this patient would grow up and die miserably at the age of about 20 or so.
Whitney's mom, Lydia Ahilanai, said she knew her daughter's case was uncommon.
I was very scared. Then I asked, have you ever did an operation like that to the other kids apart from this? They said no. But at Israel, we used to do it. So they are going to be successful.
And that means that she would be able to live like a normal life, expectancy, have children, be like a normal child.
But the work of Save a Child's Heart doesn't stop there.
It's not the volume which counts here, it's that capacity building. And that's why you see the operations are complicated, but it's the locals who are doing with the supervision from the Israel team.
Professor Mohammed Janabi, director of the Cardiac Institute, knows it's an uphill task.
Because these operations, by our own, nobody could have tried to touch those kids.
Having him coming here, and for the first time, we did it together here, so that, well, I'm hoping that the next case I'll be able to do it by myself.
Dr. Godwin Godfrey trained in Israel for 5 years. That helped prepare him for a busy schedule when he returned to Tanzania.
I'm the only one who specializes in pediatric cardiac surgery department, but I have some help from other cardiac surgeons who specialize like in adults and vascular.
Head surgeon of Save a Child's Heart, Dr. Lior Sasson, mentored Godfrey.
I'm very proud because now he assisted me, but in many other cases he did it by himself.
What we're looking at is the fruits and the results of a long training program in Israel, where Israeli doctors have been training their colleagues from Tanzania.
Save a Child's Heart Executive Director Simon Fisher said there's been a dramatic improvement in the complexity of the cases that Godfrey can handle. Missions like this, he said, bring the Tanzanian team closer to becoming independent.
Until a year ago, Tanzanian children in need of heart surgery could not be treated inland. The only opportunities were through surgery either in India or in Israel.
This partnership is also giving both Israel and Tanzania an opportunity to take on negative perceptions.
And it's the same thing that many people come to Africa. They don't think if they'll find cars, roads and everything. They always think about they'll find people starving and living in the jungles and what. So it's really about the image that is portrayed.
Randy Weiss recruits volunteers and spends a lot of time keeping the children happy. She hopes the good work done here and other places will help get the word out, not only about this organization, but Israel as well.
There's so much negativity associated with Israel, and especially any kind of news that comes out of Israel, and people tend to ignore all these wonderful things.
Missions like these can help tip the scales.
I can guarantee you that their image of Israel changed after their child or their children received surgery.
Such was the case for this Muslim dad.
I love Israel because he rescued my son's life. Give me 5. Yes, he's so good.
And that says it all. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
Coming up, learn more about an upcoming major conference highlighting the scourge of Christian persecution around the world. Later this year, a major conference on the plight of persecuted Christians around the world is being planned in Moscow. I sat down with Ken Barron, the Chief of Staff of Franklin Graham, and Ken Isaacs, the Vice President of Samaritan's Purse, to talk about this important event. How serious is the situation for Christians here in the Middle East?
Oh, I think it's very serious. I mean, we do a lot of work in, whether it's in Jordan, whether it's in Syria, whether it's in Turkey. We work in many different Middle Eastern countries, Iraq. That space is shrinking all the time for them. ISIS is sending a very clear and chilling signal when they line up 21 Ethiopians and cut their heads off. It means something. When they kidnap Christian women coming out of Assyria and put them into sexual slavery, when they execute the men in front of the family members, it means something. And there has been a mass exodus of Christians out of the Middle East, and this is where Christianity started. What I can say in the nearly 30 years that I've been working around the world is that over the last 10 years, 5 years, 2 years, I see this increasing speed of the fulfillment of prophecy. It's like a big river coming into a narrow channel and starting to pick up a lot of speed and intensity. So I can't see forward, but I can see where we are, and I can read the book, and wow, that's this, and that's this, and that's this, and whether it's in Ezekiel or Revelation or whatever, you see all of these things coming together. And this is going to be a front row seat to what happens right here.
That's exactly right. Ken, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that Kenny's exactly right, and we see this, and I think what we're seeing here is a very strong message to us. And as Kenny referenced, the book tells us everything. So our job really is urgent in the fact that regardless of the military situation and the threat is to Christianity. The threat is to the world. The threat is to us. So I see an urgency, and it's not just a military urgency. I see a spiritual urgency for us to reach people.
It seems to be a war on Christian values, not only in the States, and a war on Christianity here in the Middle East. Can you discuss what you have in mind with this conference coming up in Moscow and what you want to accomplish through that?
Well, I think that the conference is really to bring people together, and to it's a bold move, especially to do it in Moscow. The outcome is really what we want. We want to see something get done, and part of that is exposing this to the world and letting people know this is going on. We're only fed what we get from the media. There's so much more in the world going on that people don't see. So I think to expose this, to invite people from over 100 countries to come to this conference in late October, to spend 3 days together talking about this and sharing, will prayerfully have a great outcome.
Ken, what would you like to see accomplished through this conference?
What we need is recognition that members who claim Christ are being persecuted, they're being murdered. And it's very systematic. It is so big that it has now become normalized. We don't think about it anymore. I mean, the world, it's not really a big deal anymore. And the persecution can be overt and it can be covert. It can be subtle and it can be hard. But nevertheless, it's pushing Christians all the time. And I think to have it in Moscow is, it's going to be controversial, but I think that I can see the reasoning in it. About 99% of the Orthodox priests were murdered during the days of communism. So that church in itself was hugely persecuted. And but to have it there, to have the government strength there of it, I mean the government permission, the invitation to come and hold it there, that's going to send, I hope, a signal to other governments Well, what's going on with Russia? What's Russia doing about that? And my hope is that during the conference in October in Moscow, that we will be able to create a buzz. We will be able to identify and focus and amplify some of the issues that need to be addressed in a serious way. These are not some minority group issues. These are major world powers and momentums that are being created, and we need to find a way to protect Christians. Christians need a right of religion.
Up next, Israelis and Jews around the world prepare for Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Israelis and Jews around the world are celebrating the biblical Feast of Unleavened Bread. It begins with the festive meal on Passover, where they retell the story of their miraculous escape from Egypt thousands of years ago. In Jerusalem and elsewhere, many Orthodox Jews symbolically burn the last bit of hametz, or leaven, in fires throughout the city just before the holiday begins. They'll eat unleavened bread throughout the 7-day holiday.
It says in the Bible, it says in the Torah, that for 7 days to only eat matzah and not to eat any chametz. Symbolically, when the Jews left Egypt, you know, they left in a hurry and they weren't able to make their bread, and so the Torah tells us many laws of exactly how it's done. But we, for the whole holiday Passover, we don't eat anything that rises.
Well, it's wonderful to see the biblical feast unfold right there on the streets of Jerusalem. Well, that's it for this edition. Remember, you can follow us throughout the week on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And to all our Jewish friends, Chag Sameach, or Happy Passover. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.